Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Blast fantasy social influencer market, and any other way that you might be able to make some or a lot of money online. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy, once again, and we're going to get into everything from the past 24 hours in this crazy market. But before we do that, as always, just a reminder that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is super risky, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. So with that out of the way, Legendary, it is Thursday. It is the 9th of May. You are looking pretty fresh, I'm going to say, if I can say so. Switching up the background, switching up the hotels that you're staying in. Feels like we're in a bull market. Is that how you're seeing it? How are you feeling, my friend?
GM, doing quite well. I have a very, very believable virtual background. No, I'm joking. I am in London. Travel was very, very pleasant. And indeed, we are in a bull market. I think I cannot be bothered to look at ETH and PTC prices. I can only be bothered to look at Blast Gold distribution and Fantasy top impression stats at the moment. But seeing the timeline being like so united and so happy to push like one project is very rare. Like I got 2021 vibes, Top Shot vibes, NFT collection pumpamental vibes when I saw Seneca doing the spreadsheets again, but now like as one of the biggest KOLs in our space. Also NFT stats' poll on are people paying attention to Fantasy Top, or like are they dabbling into that? And 50% said either yes, massively so, or like at least doing a bit with that. And typically his audience is a bit more like more fractioned across different things and interests. So I don't know. I'm just in a good mood, and I like the vibes that we're experiencing right now.
It's interesting you say that, though, because yes, I agree. There does seem to be some consensus, at least. However, there's a bit of division today, and you'll see that in the third and final headline in the snapshot, which is pinned up top, or will be in a moment. Um, it does feel like people are getting a little bit upset when it comes to Blast Gold distribution. Some people getting a lot from just holding coins versus some people not getting some, but just not quite as much from like interacting with dApps every single day for the last multiple months. So definitely some controversy there from that respect. And we're going to dive into some of the details there, maybe consider from our personal perspectives, like, has there been any changes to our portfolios now that we see how this jackpot operates? That'll be a big question for the day. Sammy, how are you feeling, my friend? How are you kind of feeling as we draw to the close of the week this week?
I'm good. Well, it's fantastic. It's sunny here in London, so you can't not be happy when that's around. I know we're going to meet up shortly after as well, so I'll be jumping on the bike straight to pre-Richmond.
Pre-Richmond it is. Yeah, we're doing a little private. I mean, all of our modern market meetups are relatively private in the sense that we don't advertise them hugely, but this is literally team meeting, not meetup, meeting, where we're going to do some very, very serious strategy, I suspect. And yeah, figure out what we're going to do in the market. So definitely looking forward to that. But let's get into all of the headlines and the price action so that we can get up to speed with everything that we are obsessed with. So starting with the snapshot, which is pinned up top. If you do find it bringing you some value today, please do give it a like. Let's start with the price action, which Legendary is very helpfully ignoring on a down day. No wonder he's in such a good mood. Bitcoin is down a couple of percent, 61K. ETH is actually just dipped beneath 3K again. Solana is down a couple of percent at $142. In terms of the headlines, first one might get a little bit political today on today's show because there seems to be some interesting noises coming out of the US. President to veto attempts to eliminate SEC rules on companies holding crypto. This was a White House statement that was made, which is attempting to block any attempt to allow large corporations to hold crypto. So increasingly negative stuff coming out of the official channels. However, you might have also seen the videos that emerged from Donald Trump's private meeting where there were some DGODS holders who actually did some great journalism. And I think they've been clipped multiple times on the timeline in the last 24 hours, kind of sharing some of Trump's pro-crypto stances, which he shared live on that day. Whether they actually materialize or not, that is obviously a separate question, but definitely pro-crypto in those responses. Next, Fantasy Top, which we touched on, ends the main tournament abruptly yesterday and announces fantasy leagues. So there will be 50% of the participants going into the Silver League, 50% going into the Bronze League. I know we did a great spaces yesterday with Thread Guy. We had the Fantasy Top team on, or Mikado from the team did an awesome job explaining like the thinking and how they're going to proceed, and dropped a lot of alpha. So Bread was also with us for that show. Definitely want to reflect on that with him, considering whether it's still an opportunity versus how we want to kind of play that moving forward. And finally, Pacmoon wins the Blast Jackpot again with 1.3 million Blast Gold allocated to holders. That's a huge amount going to Pacmoon holders. And again, the big question here, which Blast participants want to know or are annoyed considering, how should we allocate our time and assets? Should we be using the dApps to get the gold? Should we just be buying the meme coins in the hope of winning the jackpot? Because a lot of people invested a lot of time into these protocols before, and now getting overtaken in gold by people who are just buying the meme coins. Getting into some NFT price action, we've got CryptoPunks at 38.8 ETH, Bored Apes down 6% at 14.3, Mutants down 2.9% to 2.7, DGODS at 2.2, Captains at 3, Azuki's 5.1, Penguins down 10% to 11.2, Mad Lads down another 10% to 75, and the Nouns winning bid is at 8.3 ETH. Legendary. That is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into kind of some bigger discussions today on Fantasy Top and Pacmoon and the political stuff, what's catching your attention otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a look at the Mintify heat map, there are actually a couple of things that are standing out to me. One of which is the Sword of Grandia, which is the NFT associated with Legends of Arcadia. Basically, a hero collecting 5 versus 5 game in a similar vein to AFK Arena, which is hugely popular on the App Store. Their NFTs, total of 500 supply, being down 18% over the last 24 hours. I think they had minted a couple days ago. I have 2 of them, so they've been moving around this price floor, but it is very low supply. I'm curious to see how that game will play out, and would also assume that there's token plans to that as to every game. So definitely one of the collections I'm probably watching a bit closer. On the more positive side, and I know Sammy has a couple of thoughts on that, I see Imaginary Ones moving up, but I'll leave that to him. But it does make me happy since I'm both a holder and an investor in the company. But I'll leave it to you, Sammy, to dive a bit more into the details of that.
Yeah, Sammy, you want to come in on Imaginary Ones here?
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing that I could explain for this pump is just the additional bubble that you can get from holding a certain number of them. So I think they made an announcement yesterday. So it'd be yesterday evening, literally, well, pretty much this morning UK time. But yeah, for an extra, so if you hold 5 or more, then you get additional 30% more bubble bonus to all. And if you own 10 or more, then you get an additional 70%. So obviously there's a potential dilution factor if you only hold 1. Hence the I guess people deciding to buy into those additional Imaginary Ones.
Okay, that's interesting. I've got the tweet here which you just mentioned, and I think it's always interesting to dive into this kind of stuff because we have spoken about how NFTs have basically just become this precursor / pre-sale for some token allocation. So I guess what people are doing is they're just running the maths, figuring out that okay, well, if this is the token allocation, then these NFTs are underpriced for whatever reason. So it seems like own 5 or more Imaginary Ones and you get 30% extra bubble, 30% bubble bonus to all And if you own 10 or more, as you said, additional 70%. So just sharing this on the screen for the people who are watching in. If you prefer the visuals, we're live on YouTube and live on X as well. Interesting stuff. Any reflections on this, Sammy, in terms of like the numbers, how people manage to crunch the numbers so quickly and just decide to buy in?
Well, I think it clearly favors the whales, because if you're just holding, if you've got like a small allocation of bubble, then I don't think holding 5 imaginary ones is going to be worthwhile. So there'll be like an optimal amount. It reminds me of the Parcel airdrop with the Homeowner Association NFTs, where you effectively got a 20-30% bonus depending how long you staked it for. So if you've got millions of points, then it's probably worth buying the NFT to get that additional bonus. But I think with this, it's probably quite similar. If you've got like a 1,000, I don't know, using arbitrary numbers here, but 1,000 bubble, and the floor price of the NFT, I don't know what it is at the moment, but say it's 1 ETH and bubble's like coming out at 10 cents, and it's probably not worth buying 5 just to get a 30% bonus on that. But obviously, if you've got millions of bubble, then it makes complete sense to buy those NFTs. So I think it is a trade-off, completely depending on how much you've got. So it will favor the whales, and they probably will be gobbling them up just to make sure they've got that additional boost.
Interesting.
Do you say imaginary ones?
Yes.
I haven't heard that project since. I am genuinely shocked. And almost in disbelief that that's still kicking.
Yeah, man.
It's like, wasn't that a derivative of Imaginary Friends? And then they had some kind of, like, was it Lacoste or something? They had all these big sponsorships in the middle of like nowhere. And it was like,
Hugo
wow,
Boss
this
is
thing is.
the fashion partnership that they have.
Yeah, so you're right. It's funny because I you're not the first person, Noah, to have kind of raised a question about it. I think 2 things. One, I think sometimes the projects out of Asia just don't get the same kind of attention as much. I think that's one of the first things. I agree with you in the sense that the art is like very similar to, what was the one you just mentioned? It
Imaginary Friends, I think.
It was something other friend, Invisible Friends.
Invisible Friends.
Yeah.
It was very similar to Invisible Friends, but what appears to be the case, and I'm actually an investor as well, so kind of talking my bag here, but since you asked the question, like they seem to have secured like really, really legit partnerships. They've built like really decent games that have appeared to get like really good traction. Maybe not in the States, maybe not in Europe, but the numbers seem to be good. I think they partnered with Samsung, they partnered with Hugo Boss, they've done sellout drops.
At this point in the market, bro, it doesn't even really matter what tangible things they did. The fact they're still kicking is just like, I respect that. Like, the fact they're still around after all of this time, and they dropped at like the tippity top of the bull market and stayed throughout the entire bear. Yeah, I'm going to spend some time today looking back at it, because that's impressive that they're still here. That's building to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're interested, definitely take a look into their founders. They were very impressive to me when I had a chat with them. Like, they've built like legit media stuff and advertising stuff out before. I was very impressed, to be honest, by the people running it, and no surprise to me that at a minimum they're still going, but not just surviving, kind of thriving as well. And as they said, we've been talking about the percentage rise in the collection, but basically the NFT floor price is almost 1.5 ETH. So done something relatively well. So thanks for bringing that up, Noah, and thanks for bringing it up, Sammy, as well. Good call outs from the Mintify heat map today. So yeah, that's really helpful additional context. Let's get into the main stuff though. Before we hit the main headlines today, I wanted to bring up as a point of discussion something that is kind of tangential to one of the main headlines today, because everyone's talking about how creators are kind of hitting the timeline and performing as part of these fantasy tournaments. But I thought this was a really interesting tweet by Clemente on performance on Twitter, metrics, what constitutes like good performance, what doesn't constitute performance. And the reason why I think it's helpful to look at what he says is because I know, and people can tell, I think he is absolutely on top of it. Like, he is on top of it super, super hard when it comes to Twitter analytics. All of his work that he does with NFT is really, really good. And I know he's been diving into all of this stuff a lot. So I wanted to give him a bit of a shout out for that, but also dig into the metrics to share with you guys, because everyone wants to know, right, how they could do better on this app, given that it's so influential. Legendary, you're smiling. I'm wondering if there's some comical YouTube comments going on at the same time. I cannot read them at the moment, though.
Yeah, I am being
focused.
discussed in the YouTube comments, and it's hilarious, but I can't reply, unfortunately.
Okay, I am focused. I will be focused. I will not look at the comments right now. So look, this was this was the main feedback. I'm going to share the screen so we can learn from the analytics. First, he said, I've been hyper obsessed with Twitter analytics for the past 18 months, and I don't doubt it with all the work he's been doing at the Nifty. The 3 metrics that make a good tweet as of now. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, to what extent you think this constitutes like good performance. Number 1, more than 10 likes per 1K views. So it's like a proportional like to view ratio. Is that something that's been on your radar? Do you think that's decent? Number 2, engagement stats, meaning comments, likes, bookmarks, profile visits that come from the tweet. And number 3, if there's a video, the average view duration, anything over 10%, people watching after 60 seconds is an overperforming video. So I'll just say that again. Anything over 10% of people watching after 60 seconds is an overperforming video. So I think that means, so long as they've watched a minute, that like would be good if 10% of people at least watch a minute of whatever you're putting out. Legendary, want to go to you first on this, because I mean, there's been a bit of a discussion on the fantasy top front of like, okay, well, look, how are you going to, what does it mean to be a good creator on this app? Like, what should the metrics ultimately be? What do you think about this initial list from Clemente?
It's definitely a better list, or a better idea than the typical engagement metrics. And people don't really, even from projects, from the marketing sides, don't really know how those metrics work, or don't pay a lot of attention. Something that Sammy also can speak from experience in advising and helping projects who are looking maybe at impression stats, have no idea what can be botted, what can't be botted, and how easy it is to manipulate all of that. 10 likes per 1K views is good. Personally, it's one of the metrics I am tracking. My average on that is higher, and I have a higher goal for that. The bookmarking thing, bookmark to like ratio, is something I like to look at, especially when you write a post that you think is helpful, alpha thread, or whatever that is. I think Sammy had also an excellent thread on Blast that got 313 likes, 271 bookmarks, so almost 1-to-1 ratio on the likes to bookmarks, which is always an indicator that people actually are interested in what you have just written, but also probably often like correlates if you have that CTA in there, that call to action to say, hey, bookmark that. I had a similar thread. Very, very tough to stay focused while you keep changing the YouTube comments. I had a similar thread on Blast as well, and said it's going to be a lengthy read, just bookmark that. And I think bookmark to like ratio is also 1-to-1 on that. It had even more bookmarks than likes. So I think that's helpful, especially if you think you put out a good thread and you monitor that. In terms of the views on video, anything over 10% definitely good. Low attention span, like I personally struggle to watch a video that's more than 2 or 3 minutes long if it's not something that's of interest to me. Or it's just on the timeline, I can't be bothered to watch more than 10 seconds of a video. So for me to watch something for more than 10%, it's pretty impressive. I think that is, again, another shout out to us. We had the statistics, not for video, but for Spotify, I think, for the average listening duration of the modern market replays on Spotify. And people are tuning in for, on average, more than 80 or 90% of the show. I think that was. Yeah. So that's says a lot about the content, right? That you do. If you have people listening to the whole thing, or watching the whole thing. And to me, those metrics are more important than like the overall views. Like I'm more excited about that stat for the modern market, for the thing that we are doing here, and people listening to that, than, I don't know, posting something funny and that gets, instead of my typical 5 to 10K views, it breaks out and gets like 50 or 60K views. That's not as meaningful, not nearly as meaningful as having like a community who is listening to the show and is coming back daily and is staying for the whole hour with us. So I do like the thinking of Clemente, to cut a long story short.
Okay, I think that's yeah, useful analysis. 'Cause I know you look at this stuff a lot as well. Sammy, you take a look at this stuff a lot. I want to link this to Fantasy Top in some way because on the spaces yesterday, one of the things that was suggested by the team was that the issue with botting, there were two types of botting issues. One that was expected and one that was not expected. They kind of had an idea of how that people's tweets themselves might get botted. So that was like they kind of knew that they had some kind of contingency plan for that and were kind of ready to take action there. The thing that they were like less prepared for in some way was the fact that people's follower accounts would get botted. And so that obviously skews the whole metrics as well. Now, one of the potential solutions that I think they're working on, and I'll bring Brett into this conversation as well to make sure I'm getting this right, and just for his thoughts in a second, but we'll go to Sammy first, is the potential solution was, well, let's make follower numbers irrelevant. Like, let's try to make it that you put a tweet out and it will be judged on its kind of capturing of crypto Twitter mindshare. Like, doesn't matter if you've got 10 followers or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000, just like capturing crypto Twitter mindshare. Doesn't matter how many followers you have. What's your thought on that potential solution or getting rid of the importance of follower account?
Well, I still think that's an issue because if you remove that, you're effectively playing into the favor of those that do have bigger followings. So
yeah,
you're kind of penalizing the smaller person. And I think just to Clemente's point around all those individual metrics, like we monitor it so closely, and I see botted accounts, and some of them are really subtle. Like you'll see the likes, retweets, and impressions all botted, but the proportions don't add up. So it is a 1 to 10. So 1K to 10 view is 10 likes. Sorry, is the normal statistic up to a certain point. But if you hit a viral thread, that goes out of whack. So like, if you have a very consistent thing all the way up to say 1 million views, then that doesn't make sense either. So it's just interesting to see because there are inflection points at each stage of hitting a thread that goes viral. I think I compare like my best performing thread, which was like 1.6 million views, and that's only 2.2K likes, which is massively under the amount of likes that's needed to get to that 1.6 million. It should be around the 10 or 15K mark if that holds up. So it doesn't add up specifically. And I think teams that are coming into this, they need to understand how that algorithm operates and how the ratios work, because it is very nuanced. And I think just simply removing follower account altogether just doesn't work. That kind of it works against the whole thesis. It disincentivizes smaller accounts from getting involved, and it just becomes like a whales game. I think the league system is good though, because you could categorize, you can take snapshots of people when they enter the tournament, and you can project maybe a typical growth amount to maybe see if they do get botted, then you can work out how much their follower account has grown, because there might be like genuine followers that come in. But if like say Jen and War Daddy that went from say 15 or 10 to 20K all the way up to like 40, 50K, obviously most of that's botted. But I think Jen had maybe 5K followers just from hitting it out the park early on. So there is like genuine followers that it's hard to distinguish from those bots. So it takes a lot more thought than just kind of removing follower account altogether.
Yeah, ultimately, it's a really complex problem to solve for sure. My only wondering thing, like I know you said that it could potentially still goes back to follower account because that people without the bigger following would get penalized if it was general crypto mindshare. I wonder if there's something to do with these ratios though, like views to likes, views to bookmarks. Like I saw one of Legendary's tweets the other day. It was like, I don't know, 45 likes, 49 bookmarks or something. So it's like, what are all those people doing who are bookmarking it and not liking it? But the point being that it was an incredibly liked post. I don't know. There's probably some ratio there that like an interesting ratio that you could cook up that demonstrates properly if you take into account comments as well.
I think there's always going to be ways people can game it. You can even bot bookmarks, and I think those that are smart can kind of work out.
Yeah, you're right.
By creating a guide to boost their own bookmarks, they have a legitimate way of boosting it in the algo and all that kind of stuff. But I think it just does come down to it's going to be a lot of work for the team, and it has to be they have to do it intentionally. And if they're making that much money from pack sales and things like that, you'd hope that they'd be able to invest that into weaning it all out. And it might take a day to conclude on these tournaments to make sure that they're fairly like evaluated post completion. But yeah, I think it's going to be a bit tough.
Yeah, I don't think there's a fair solution to that. Like, every way how you approach this, it will be gamed, because you will have rules on that, how it works. And if those rules are known, or at least partially known, that's enough to bot it. If, reach mattered, then you can bot smaller creators for them to have more followers, so that their reach relative to followers, as we've seen with War Daddy Capital, who had 9K followers and now sitting at 40K followers, goes down. So you can do it both in your favor, but also to like fuck with the metrics of other people. And if the incentive structure, aka Blast Gold, ETH, potential token drop, whatever, is big enough, people will go at length to find out solutions, how to game the system, how to improve their own metrics or the metrics of the people that they're holding, and to fuck with other people. There is no fair solution to that. Look at a product like NFT Inspect that has been out for, I don't know, more than a year, and just tries to come up with a global reach statistic to tell you who has the biggest mindshare in CryptoX, and this is being like gamed. And you can, I know, because I was chasing those ranks and I was in the top 10 for a while, and Sammy, you were too when you were hitting those viral threads, and we both know how social farming campaigns suddenly managed to push some people who have no real influence, but who were farming the shit out of whatever token that was to the top of that. So even a company whose core business is to filter out who has the most impactful reach on CryptoX can't do that without being gamed, then I don't see a way how Fantasy Top can figure that out. But I do still think that you can have fun playing the game. And I think it just need to acknowledge that everything will be botted. And if the team improves, the botting and the manipulation will improve too, because the incentive is large enough to do so.
And I think that's a good point around teams that have been doing it for a while. I think there's some value in partnering up and actually potentially finding some synergies, because they're going to have a lot of insights that I guess Fantasy Top coming in fresh probably don't, like whether it's like partnering with Inspect or partnering with Cookie 3 or these analytics platforms that can do the work for them, maybe outsource that if you don't have the necessary capabilities inside all the time or bandwidth.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And as you say, they've definitely got the funds to kind of invest and make sure they give it the very best go that they can. What I want to do, because I think we're just going to roll straight into the Fantasy Top headline. I saw Bread's hand raised. I saw NFT Stats hand raised as well. Want to definitely bring them into the conversation, but I'll just set up like some of the key information that came up from the past 24 hours to get everyone up to speed on where we are. Also some additional stuff which was dropped in the space for people to be aware of, and then we'll go straight to Bread to fill us in, and then want to hear NFT Stats' thoughts too. So I'm going to share this on the screen for the people who are watching in. As we said, the main headline from the day was that after wrapping up the Genesis main competition, we're thrilled to launch fantasy leagues. So half of the players now have moved up to the Silver League, while the other half remain in the Bronze League. So now that's going to be the split. We've got 2 leagues. And I guess people will continue to move up and down based on this, on their performance. The additional information, Zeneca was in the space yesterday as well and did this kind of nice write-up. I'll just share a few of the bits, and then we'll go to Brad and kind of hear his summary and thoughts as well, because he was there too. So the first thing I would say from a personal perspective, Mikado, who was from the Fantasy Top team, did a like really awesome job. Like, he was on fire. He really performed really well, answered all the questions, gave a really solid account. And whilst the friend, like, there were 2 other comparisons that always hover in the air with this type of social-fi thing. For some reason, we were comparing it with Top Shot quite a lot, mainly because of the energy around the platform. Like, people were getting quite excited. There are packs, you're breaking packs open. But then obviously that got very super diluted. Then the other comparison is obviously with Friendtech. And one of the key conclusions, I think, coming out of the show yesterday was that at a minimum, obviously they're dealing with some complex problems, but at a minimum, they were really good at communicating, like way better at communicating than some of those previous teams. So that was like one key takeaway. In addition to that, let's see. Oh, I've copied the wrong Zeneca tweet. That's not the one that I wanted. That is annoying. Okay, let's just go to Bread then. Bread, we had the league's announcement yesterday. There were some other key pieces of information from the space yesterday. What were your thoughts on Fantasy Top after that particular show? Welcome to the stage, my friend.
Yeah, hey guys. Honestly, like the biggest takeaway for me, you guys are talking about Twitter metrics and stuff and combating that. You're obviously much more in tune with the trials and tribulations there. When I hear you guys talk about it, I think back to what's going on with the Frentech stuff, or what happened with the whole season of Frentech, where we didn't know week over week how points were calculated, but that kind of added to the fun of it. And I wonder if the team can insulate themselves by not making the rules explicit, which can be kind of frustrating. I get it, it's a competitive team, but it was also really fun for us on Frentech to try to like decipher what the actual algo was to know who to play for the next week. When I say who to play, as in like what keys to buy for the next week. So I actually might submit that to the team as like review and reflections of doing the same stuff on Frentech, because it's ultimately the same. Deploy capital to earn points. How are you doing that? Best way to do that. It was all the same shit. Anyways, takeaway from space last night. Again, not the Twitter metrics stuff, more about the team's overall thoughtfulness of the economy that they're building. And I say economy very explicitly because they are building an economy, and just the idea of making sure to constantly be recycling fees generated from the platform back into incentives, and trying to encourage developers to build on top of their application. They're already talking with 2 teams for that. So for me, it was less about like, is the actual like game fun and sustainable, so much as like, is the structure and the bones and how the team is approaching that sustainable. And like you said, Mikado was a fucking ace on how he responded to stuff, because it wasn't just directional responses. You can hear clearly that they would go back and reference long conversations that they had on how they want to approach something. So you're hearing really, really in-depth thoughts on something. And I think that was just really encouraging to hear.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I would agree with all those takes. Thank you for bringing up the economy point, the specific number, which he specifically said, do not quote me on this necessarily. Do not hold me to this. Do not necessarily expect this number to be the case. But he said around like something in the region of less than 50% of the profits will be kind of plowed back into the economy. So that was a really important point, and people seem to like that idea. But again, that's just a number that was quoted on the show. He specifically said, do not consider that to be definitive. I'm trying to think of some other things. I found
Just to double click on that, like, and to like emphasize my point, right? He said 45% back in the economy. Like that's a good thing to hear, and everyone gets pricked up on it because it just means more money. But whenever he said that, he didn't just say like, oh yeah, we're going to give people their money back. He said we're going to give people their money back because they realize how important it is to constantly have the flywheel going, to incentivize people to like. And so you heard that like they didn't just make a flippant decision to just like, okay, 45% makes sense. They're like, okay, it's very important for us to keep this sustainable, to have things forward moving, and to use what we've earned as incentives to keep further earnings coming. And that's why an example of like the responses he was giving.
I like it. I think the why is very important in that case. A couple more details from the Zeneca tweet, then we'll go to NFT stats for his thoughts, and then we'll just go to Bread maybe to wrap it up. Any final reflections on this topic before we move on? He also mentioned that obviously there'll be multiple tournaments, lots of different types of tournaments. A cool one that he kind of just mentioned quite flippantly was that, you know, maybe you'll have one about a type of competition where it's partnered with Eigenlayer or something, and it could be about like who produces the best restaking content for, I don't know, the week, the day or something, and then there's some kind of sponsored element like that. I thought that was kind of interesting to see potential other outcomes. And also he spoke about supply and how heroes would get introduced. And I believe it was something like they would come to market only via packs or the secondary market, but it's always going to be dynamic. It's not like it's going to kind of scale up in line with demand for the platform. So if they see no growth next week or the week after, then there would be no heroes. If they see growth, and if they see reason to introduce more, then that comes in, and they kind of come in slowly. So I think that was an interesting perspective, given that supply is always one of the most determining factors of price, and people are always concerned about oversupply in this space. Final point that Zeneca made, Clans were mentioned, as were other tournament types, and probably a couple of other things I'm forgetting. So interesting. Maybe there'll be ways to group together in some kind of interesting way. Want to bring NFT stats into the conversation. We'll go back to Bread to tie up for any final reflections after that before we move on to the next headlines. But welcome to the stage, Sam. What are your thoughts on Fantasy Top? Any key reflections on where that game is going at the moment?
Man, so many different thoughts, so many different things that have been said here that I could talk about. I think I'm like, to the point about like just make it pure virality. I think I mean, you could do that, but then literally you just get rewarded for buying Greg's card, and he says GM to everybody except for people in Antarctica or whatever, and then you win, right? Like, and I think the issue that I think is going to be the hardest thing is getting the creators to stay motivated and care. And the reason that's important is because if you get creators who you buy their card and then they like take a couple days off, then people's investment's going to be worth nothing. And I think you don't want investments that are like very unpredictable. And to do this well is a lot of work for the creator. So I don't know. I think like finding ways to keep kind of smaller accounts motivated, is going to be one of the harder issues. I think we're going to see peaks and troughs where people get into it and then stop getting into it. And I think it's going to make the asset class of cards difficult to invest in. And I think I say asset class because it's a multi-million-dollar product right now. So that's one of the things that I like am curious about is how creators are going to stick with it, because it like, and you see a lot on the timeline. It is tiring. It takes a lot of work, and you have people yelling at you. And I just think like doing this weekend in, weekend out, like it's going to be hard. To the point about them giving back 45%. Like, guys, this is Blast. That is not a big deal at all. If you actually look at Blast distribution, they say using gold to direct, or their blog, they say using gold to directly incentivize revenue or allowing gold to be effectively purchased through a fee, exchanges that incentivize volume is issue number 2. Like, they are using gold to incentivize revenue right now. They're saying if you buy cards and if you those cards are going to give us revenue, and those cards are your gateway to earning gold because their whole prize is gold. So the fact, like, to me, I'm surprised it's just 45%. If you actually look at YOLO games and a lot of these products, they give 100% of fees back to users. If you look at Blur has never taken any revenue ever. If you look at everything that Pacman has ever said, he has written this answer for you. He has written this answer down for everyone, saying you must give all your revenue back to users. So I was surprised that people are making a big deal out of this 45% number, because that is something that Pacman has basically told people they have to do. And he's also given you the soundbite for what you're supposed to say about creating the flywheel. So I don't know. I'm certainly less impressed by that. I think if he said like that this 45% number wasn't guaranteed, then that certainly did not come out in the messaging, because I wasn't in the spaces, but I had tons of people in my comments saying they're giving 45% back to users. So I'm surprised by the excitement, but I'm not surprised, but because I know most people don't pay attention to the subtleties of the way the team communicates as closely as a lot of us do. But or look at a place like YOLO, where they literally take no fees for themselves. And that's actually the required business model. So I don't know, that I found less surprising. If you actually look at fees to pay out right now, the fees they've taken in is already worth more than their entire gold distribution. So the math doesn't really math, unless they start doing stuff like that, at least in the world of making this not like a heavy rate game.
I love that take. That's really, really important. And I wonder whether that means, I mean, what happens? Because I think you're right. The Pacman could potentially crack the whip here and say, look, this is one of this is like one of the conditions of you receiving all of this gold. Like, one of the reasons we've given you all this gold is so that you give it away and so that you give all back. And I guess you touched on the business model, Sam. I guess the business model for these teams to really make their money in like the short to medium term is on the token itself. It's like you build it all up, you give everything away up till now, you build a real strong product, and you get rewarded when your token comes to market, not too far a distance away, maybe a couple of months, in line with like Blast coming to TG and all these other projects. And that's where you have your big financial gain. Do you have any reflection on that business model?
Yeah, I mean, look, the fantasy wallet already has $11 million in fees earned on Etherscan. They got 770,000 gold, which is not worth 11 million. So that's more money than Blur has made in a year and a half. So I don't know if But that said, Pacman, knowing all this, gave them the biggest gold allocation. He's out there publicly buying cards, so clearly they're all copacetic. I'm curious to see how that part plays out, but I think that is them kissing the ring a little bit because you got to do that if you're going to be part of this game.
Very, very interesting point. Maybe that's a point people should push more on the timeline, because I think that is
bags are too packed, man. Bags are too packed. I've never done a survey where 50% of people all said they were participating in one game. And I did a poll on my thing, and 50% of the people who responded said that they're participating in this. Dude, your timelines are just mad bag packed on this game.
Yeah, excellent point too. Okay, we wanted to go to, thanks for that insight, Sam. Really, really helpful, and a point I think that would have been missed by a lot of people. Brad, you were in the space yesterday. We've kind of discussed it from a variety of ways, but we also have other news to discuss today. Any final reflections? Anything we've missed? Headline things for anyone?
Nah, man, I think roll on with it. I just think I think maybe Sam's commentary there is commentary on how like beaten we've been across other ecosystems, where 45% is amazing. And like I'm squarely in that category. I haven't been participating in Blast, so 45% to me is like, wow, these guys are really doing it. But if you're exposed to Blast deeply, like some of you guys are, you're like, well, that's like half of what everyone else is doing. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very good point. Well, we're going to keep covering it, guys. I think we are all on stage. We're all playing in some capacity, and we'll keep following it. We'll keep playing along and keep you up to date with how things progress. They've definitely got off to a good start, so people are invested. That's step one for any company, I think. Let's move on. We've got a couple of other pieces of news to touch on.
Sorry, Modern Market. Would I be able to say something real fast?
Okay. One final point, Derek. Go for it.
Just a shout out to NFT Stats, because the other day he used all this virality that's going on because of what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling everybody who to follow. And I think that using this momentum that he's having to benefit other creators in the space that are not necessarily into it, it's really valuable.
This was one of the only things there's an appropriate thing to interrupt with. I couldn't agree more. Appreciate that take, Derek. NFT Stats also included a bunch of us in that tweet, so therefore it's even more valid. So I appreciate that.
I got to give credit where credit's due. Ben Roy did something similar. He said, now that y'all are following me for like 24 more hours, let me give credit to one person you shall follow. I was like, yeah, that's a good tweet. And I'm going to make one societal point, which I did not make. I think one of the biggest issues with society today is that everyone looks up to Elon, who thinks that you should use your platform to dunk on people, fire people in public, and that is just such bad business. It's not only mean, it's just terrible, terrible business, and you can only do it if you are the richest person on the planet. And people should know that when you have the spotlight on you, the single best thing you can do is shine it on other people. It's the first thing I learned at a shark eat shark place like Goldman Sachs. They teach you that. Like, use your spotlight to bring up other people. Basic business, also basic decency. But Ilan Darish in the audience, one of my favorite people in the space. Dude, thanks for the comment.
Love you, my brother. And just like something random, a lot of artists over here we don't necessarily play the game or anything, because obviously like our profiles are really important to us. So shilling is not a thing. So seeing that people are taking this kind of dynamics to benefit others, it's really nice. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Excellent shout out. Couldn't agree more with the sentiment. Thanks for coming in with that, Derek. Okay, final couple of headlines that we wanted to touch on before we get to a close today. We'll deal with one relatively quickly. We always flirt with the political news sometimes and try to get in and out relatively quickly. But I feel like this one is worth just touching on very briefly, at a minimum, just to make people aware of what's going on. This is some news from Deep News, which is, by the way, I'm showing this on screen. If you don't know a good site to like get a quick summary of at any point in time, this is like AI generated crypto news. It's awesome. deepnftvalue.com is where I check a couple of things whilst also doing my research in the morning on Twitter. But a little bit of a summary of what's happening in the States. The US House of Representatives has passed a particular resolution aimed at repealing the SEC's staff accounting bulletin. It seeks to nullify SEC guidance that requires firms to record customer crypto holdings as liabilities on their balance sheets. There was some bipartisan support on it, but Biden has issued a statement of administration policy indicating he would veto the measure. And I guess I would just want to tie this in with a couple of other things happening in the States. You obviously had the viral videos from Trump's I don't know what it was, like a private dinner, private speech with a few people, which a few DGods holders had attended, and kind of pressing him on crypto. You know, admittedly, it's easy to say things in the moment, so you don't know necessarily the veracity of, like, if he says he is pro crypto, which he says, and he said, "Oh, if you would you be willing to accept crypto donations in crypto?" And he said, "Yes, if we can't, we'll make that happen." So it's like kind of saying the right things. I saw another video where he was kind of mocking Biden in a way that suggested Biden wouldn't even know what was going on with crypto, for example. So there's that kind of thing bubbling in the background as well. And if that wasn't enough, I'm pretty sure the meme coins, I saw some screenshots on Twitter, so I don't have the numbers with you here, but Biden and Trump went wild as a consequence. And we have touched on like political meme coins earlier on in this cycle. Just like a quick reflection, Legendary maybe, and then definitely want to hear from our US correspondent Funky on this, on the kind of the political element, to what extent it relates to the political meme coins. Where do you want to take that, Legendary?
Yeah, I think you can't really take pro or anti-crypto statements at face value, because it's obviously running up to an election, and whatever is the most attractive narrative is the one that will be posted. Trump did post in 2019 he's not a fan of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, criticizing them. Now he also quipped about Bowden as the meme coin, and now commenting more positively on that. So, you know, whatever is the narrative of the day and is the most attractive and the most beneficial to a politician is the one that will be probably used and spun up. So yeah, gotta take those things with a pinch of salt.
I do think I agree with you on that for sure, but I do think more broadly it's interesting, and I don't know to what extent this is like a mass thing or whether we're just making a big deal about it because we're on crypto Twitter, but I do think it's interesting that there does seem to be a dividing line where more and more people are thinking, okay, if you are pro crypto, you just can't vote left. And when I say left, I appreciate I'm European. Democrats are like nowhere near as left as what I think people are in Europe, but you can't vote Democrat basically if you are pro crypto. I've definitely noticed that trend or that thought emerge, that line of thinking. Would love to hear from Funky, who's over in the States, our official US political expert. You've been upgraded, Funky, promotion here. You're now the expert. Is that a fair assessment? Like, what do you think of that line of thinking, which is, you know, you can't vote Democrat now if you are pro crypto?
GM Modern Market. Just full disclosure, I've never belonged to a political party. I hate both of them. I don't think that either of them serve any average person. They're only beholden to banks and corporations and so on and so forth. Getting that out of the way, I think, yes, the sentiment is true. In fact, our lead software dev said something because they posted that in our Slack and said you basically have to vote straight red if you want something good to happen for crypto. I think what was interesting about this action, we already know that the SEC is completely out of control and Gary is just doing whatever the hell he's doing. And 21 Democrats broke ranks to actually vote for that bill yesterday. So I thought that was encouraging. And I think that there are some probably younger, savvier Democrats who are probably going to want to appear a little bit pro crypto. I also feel as if just the bigger thing, going back to Trump, what you were saying, you know, originally, yes, he was, I believe in the US dollar. I think Bitcoin's a scam. You know, those comments came out several years ago. Earlier, when the ETFs were becoming a thing, there was another clip that went around with Trump saying he had nothing against Bitcoin, still favored the dollar, but he's okay with Bitcoin. And then, of course, with the clip that appeared yesterday, he is just, yeah, I'm good for crypto. If you want what's good for crypto, vote for me. My biggest fear at this point is the whole RFK Jr. wild card, because I'm old enough to remember what Ross Perot did in that election with Bush and Clinton. And I think you're going to have, if people vote for RFK Jr., that's going to peel votes away from Trump, not Biden. And then we might have just another 4 years of Biden. And my biggest fear is we're going to get even more draconian policies coming out. And US should be taking a leadership position in this industry. This is the place where all the capital is. You know, no disrespect to any other parts of the world. We know this is where all the money flows stem from. So I think it's a tricky situation. I really feel as if this election that's coming is going to be quite pivotal for the entire industry. But I'm just remaining hopeful that we do have some more common sense prevail. Look at Hester Pierce. Almost every time something the SEC does, she writes almost like a rebuttal letter, almost like a dissenting opinion about some of the things that have happened. And she's probably the one person really pushing the SEC in the right direction. But hopefully we'll have some better legislation coming down the road.
Interesting stuff, man. Really, really appreciate that perspective. I think it's, I understand the take of when you introduce like that third option, how sometimes it just ends up diminishing one side more than the other because you're just providing an alternative. So appreciate that perspective. Just wanted to share Solas's take before we have to move on quickly from YouTube comment. Said Larry Fink, BlackRock CEO, is a Democrat and now more favorable to crypto. It just made me think, like, Funky, you mentioned that on some level, all of them are just serving the corporations and banks and things like that. And if one, maybe it doesn't matter what they think. If Larry Fink is the CEO of America and CEO of BlackRock, maybe that is more influential on some level. I don't know, but I just wanted to share that thought.
That's what I find most puzzling, is that you have these major actors like BlackRock clearly showing pro Bitcoin, pro crypto in the industry, and politicians still don't get the message. I don't get it. It's befuddling to me.
I wonder whether it's just a little bit of kind of dramatic theater, though. Like, if the money is moving in that direction, maybe the theater will follow just a little bit later. I'm not sure. But we have to get to the final headline in just a second. Before we do that, we'll do a very swift roundup from the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else. And we got to get a take from Sammy and Legendary on Blast Gold and whether it should be allocated the way it's being allocated. So first thing, number one, Akubu protocol. I know Legendary is probably in that, and Sammy as well. I need to claim my airdrop. Has gone live with an airdrop. Go and claim your tokens if you were involved. Number two, Pups Room Bridge opens to allow Pups trading on Magic Eden. Number three, Pacmoon integrates with Play Cambria to offer extra pack rewards for players. Frentech adds new casual price curve, which is 100x cheaper than the standard one. Next, Trump announces he's accepting presidential campaign donations in crypto and will try to keep crypto business in USA. That's obviously what he said live when asked. Next, Blast Invaders sell out as a refundable collection with 172 ETH locked in TVL, seeing that model of coming to market more and more, where you can simply mint and have a guaranteed refund for those funds after a defined lockup period. And finally, VanEck ETF provider introduces meme coin index. The meme coin index tracks the performance of the 6 largest meme coins. So some that were included were Pepe, Dog with Hat, Flocky, and Bonk. Pretty interesting to see that really get institutionalized at the moment. So that's the Web3 roundup from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. We do want to get a hot take on the final headline because we don't have much time left today. We've got to go to Sammy on this. Sammy, do you want to set up the situation and then give your take on it, on what the hell is going on with the Blast Gold jackpot and why everyone is so upset?
Yeah, I mean, so the TLDR is basically that the Blast jackpot's been favoring Pacmoon significantly. I think if you look at Pacmoon whales like Ovi, who's got 33,000, I think 33,000 gold from the last airdrop, which is insane. Like, it's just insane when you think that you've been farming these protocols. But on the flip side, I think it is just down to having a high conviction bet. Like, ultimately, you're picking, you're like, well, this is the number one meme coin on Blast. Pac-Man's even said that he's going to reward tokens specifically more than NFTs with the Blast jackpot. So he's almost laying it out on a plate. So anyone that doesn't pick that up and doesn't do anything with that information, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, the writing was on the wall. He even said that you could win it again. And I think people are just upset because they feel like they're getting diluted. They're spending all this ETH on certain protocols. I mean, we don't even know how much people are going to be earning individually from Blur, because it's all pretty opaque. So I think that ultimately there will be some sort of balancing, but it would be funny if all of a sudden he turns around and Pacmoon becomes Blast. It becomes the actual token after. That would be absolutely wild. But I think that, yeah, it just permeates through the whole ecosystem now. And I think it'd be interesting to see if there are some other meme coins that are selected as kind of second in command. I know Big had a jackpot win recently. people are trying to distribute other meme coins and coins for protocols more widely to try and improve the odds of being hit. I don't know whether it's actually an algo that's picking these, or whether it's someone literally pushing a button behind the jackpot. It's hard to tell, but yeah, I think ultimately a lot of the people that are farming Blast heavily do have pretty big exposure to Pacmoon, because they were probably posting about it early, put it into Wasabi, earned the gold through that. So I think there is an element of it all being entwined. It's just, I think people that just didn't have any exposure to it are just upset.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point, but I actually think there's a lot of like the more DeFi capital heavy people who just fade the creator stuff. They're just like, these people shilling this random coin, I bet loads and loads of them did not bother at all. And so that probably pains them deeply that for their months of toil, they're getting overtaken by like these, you know, how do I phrase this? Like less maybe Blast native creators who kind of come in more influencer style, make a few tweets and then out earn them. So I can see why there's at least some upset there. Legendary, you have a lava take.
Just one quick response to that though. But if that's the case, surely you just buy the token, chuck it in the jackpot. Like you don't need to.
I mean, exactly. OG General did that. Bought fucking 350k worth of Pac, put it into Wasabi, and earned his 14,000 gold 2 days later. If you don't adapt to the rules, you will die. Nobody stops you from doing both. You could have farmed the first month or the first 2 months on Blast, and now we have the jackpot and we have Blur. And again, jackpot gold accrual rate is increasing. NFT stats pointed it out very prominently for the people who didn't notice. And if you ignore this $1 million gold jackpot pot, and if you ignore Blur, you cannot complain that others are making more gold than you. And also, if you think that this is the last inflation of gold that we will see along the way, that's definitely not the case. I do expect the next Blast gold distribution to be significantly bigger. I do expect to be more gold, to see more gold that's going to be added to the pot in whatever way, shape, or form. So I do think that there's going to be a lot more gold, and I do think that Sam will have to correct his estimations of the gold price down once we see that gold hitting the market or hitting the farmers. But yeah, it's a very fast-paced game, and it's all about attention, and you have to adapt. You cannot do the things that you've done 2 months before. You just have to play the game if you want to maximize your gold gain. And the game is the jackpot right now and the Blur marketplace.
Adapt or die. Adapt or die, guys. That is the name of the show. That has been our show. Hope you enjoyed. As always, thank you to my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy. Thank you to our contributors, as always, NFT Stats, NB, Funky, and Bread. And thank you so much for joining. In the audience, we'll be back with you again tomorrow. Same time, same place, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, live on X and YouTube. Have a wonderful day. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.